Hope Scott. Now you're about to hear from my sister in love. It's funny. When you see me and Hope together, there's gonna be laughter. There's always gonna be fun. She's someone that I look up to. She's someone that I look at when I need a shoulder to lean on. But what you're about to hear now is her story. And I can remember when I married into the family, she was one that made me feel welcome like none other. And I will never forget how she's been a true sister and friend to me. Get ready to hear her story. It is amazing.
Hello, my name is Hope Scott. I am an author, I am a blogger, I am a life coach, a child of God, and a mother of 2. I am the third child in 4 stair-step children. The first was Dawn. The second one a year later came along was Greg. Then myself, Hope, and then lastly my brother Dexter. I always like to call him my big brother because I noticed that out of the 4 of us, all of them tell me what to do for some reason. I grew up in Enfield, North Carolina, and my siblings and I, we were very close. My parents made sure that we always took care of one another and that we were always close, so much so that if something got broken around the house and no one fessed up to it, all 4 of us would get a spanking for it. But it was a good childhood. My dad was strong. He taught us a lot of values. He taught his boys to be men, and he didn't teach us girls to be women. My mother did that. However, my dad instilled in us a strength that I still see within myself and my sister today. Pretty quiet. I had a few really good friends, but I didn't spread myself around there too much. I've always loved to read. Always you could find me with my head in a book, and just love to laugh. I always loved life, always. Well, I think there's always, since I've always had a sort of introverted personality, that I think it was always a struggle to just come into a crowd and be the leader of the crowd. I would always have to find someone in that crowd to connect with. And when I connected with you, there was just no stopping me. My sister, Dawn, she's the leader. She's bossy. Greg is the loud one. He's bossy. My younger brother Dexter, he's very low-key. He's very low-key. He's loving. He loves to laugh. He's a jokester. And I think I might be I think I'm the baby. I don't know. I think we've always had that sense of humor. I share it with my girls because it lightens the mood. I can say something to them and be serious, but if I put that spin on it and put that laughter in there, that I'm not abusively talking to them, then they still get what I'm saying and they still love me and they still do what I tell them to do, but it's just putting the lightheartedness in it, I think. I think that I do have a great sense of humor. I think I can come off serious a lot, but once you get to know me, you'll see that I'm really fun.
So now transitioning college years,
I was a business administration major, and I minored in marketing. I always saw myself working a job in business, some type of high-powered position. I always saw myself with a 2-seater sports car, and I lived in a huge house that only had 1 bedroom. I did not desire to get married or to have children. I just saw that. That was so funny. So we're really going with this line of questions.
so tell me.
My actual picture was, I graduated from Elizabeth City State University. I moved to Raleigh, and I eventually started seeing someone, and we got married, and I had 2 beautiful daughters. However, that marriage ended in divorce due to abuse. He never put his hand on me, but there was always a threat in the air, but he was very emotional, verbally, mentally, just very mentally abusive. We actually met at a job when I moved here to Raleigh. I got a job in Garner, North Carolina, and I met him. He was working there. And it actually took me 9 months. I remember it. It took me 9 months before I would accept a date to go out with him. And I was wined and dined. I mean, the doors were open for me, and you know, he was the quote unquote the perfect gentleman. And we talked on the phone for all hours, and it seemed to be good. There were a few times in there, of course, where, you know, couples, you kind of get upset with each other or whatever, but he was very quick to apologize. And I was one where I would break it off and I would be fine and I would go about my business, but he would always, you know, call or try to patch it up. So we did eventually get married. He had a strength about him, and he was very charming, and he just, at that time, he seemed to have a great sense of humor, and he just seemed to be a very strong person, someone that felt like I could lean on at the time. Thought he was stable. At the time, he owned his own home. So I looked at that as, you know, growing up, you know, with my father and the way he taught us about finances, I looked at that as an accomplishment for a young single black man to actually own his own home and to work and to, you know, pay his bills. So I looked at that as he was a very responsible person. I think I found out after we were married that he actually had been in an altercation with a female and charges were brought against him for hitting her. Things started to change from the very beginning. We got married. We actually went to the Justice of the Peace to get married, and my dad gave us a huge reception at my family home in Enfield. And I remember it perfectly well. I was given a beautiful white negligee as a wedding gift. And after the reception was over with, and you know, we came back home because we were married then, and we came back to the house, I called myself going back in the bathroom and just getting all beautiful and putting on this negligee and coming out to my husband, and I literally stood in front of him and while he sat on the couch watching TV, and he reached up and he just pushed me away and he kept watching TV. One afternoon we got into an argument, and I don't even remember what the argument was about, but I remember going in the bathroom and closing the door, and I don't know, I locked it. For some reason I felt like I needed to lock it, and he started beating on it, and this was in the beginning. He started beating on the door, and he was telling me to come out, I'm gonna teach you how to talk to me, I'm gonna teach you how to talk to me. And I remember just kind of sitting in there crying and upset, and I was terrified. I did not share it with anyone. There was shame. There was even unbelief. I just couldn't believe how things had changed. So no, I did not share it with my family. I didn't share it with anyone until years later. I didn't want to talk about it. And I also grew up in the church and was, you know, and was always taught that once you're married, you work it out. You don't leave. You do everything you can to save your marriage. So that's how I grew up, and that's what I followed. Years later, as things continued, you know, it was ups and downs, good, bad. We actually lost the house that we were living. We had a lot of financial issues, and we actually lost our first home. That was the house that he bought, because I didn't realize that, you know, even though the outside picture looked one way, it was definitely another way when I moved into it. And I did have my 2 daughters, raising my 2 daughters. No doubt that he loved our daughters. However, there was just something that just did not fit. It was not a loving household. I don't remember ever speaking out. I had taken on a new job, and I actually would leave that job and kind of go to my sister-in-law's house just about every day. I used to stop on the way home. And and she was working with Wake County Social Services at that time, and she actually handed me a questionnaire. And I looked at her, and she said, "Are you being abused?" And the first thing I thought was, no one's hitting me. And she told me that there are other types of abuse. So she gave me a questionnaire and I started filling it out, and my eyes began to open as to what type of relationship I was in. See, I was naive. I married, and again, I grew up in the church, so you don't leave. You work it out no matter what. And so what I was doing was I was changing myself. I was bending myself to try to make this marriage work. And no matter what happened, it wouldn't work. Sometimes we would get in arguments, and I would say that the sky was blue, and he could say it was purple. And by the time he got through with me, I was apologizing to him, and I was agreeing with him that the sky was purple. Determined to make it work. I was just determined to make the marriage work. And I felt like I had joined so many arguments that I ended up apologizing for, even though they weren't my fault. I always felt like I was the one in the wrong, or that I did something bad. I was always being punished. If I did not do something that he thought I was supposed to do, or we didn't agree, I was always somehow being punished for that. And it could be not speaking to me, or not talking to me, or completely ignoring me. I got that a lot. I got completely ignored a lot, even when I was talking. One night, I was in my bedroom, and I was just kind of praying and just kind of wondering what was going on. So, and the girls, for some reason, they weren't there. I don't know whether they were spending the night with their cousins, or they were with my parents, or what, but I remember we were home alone. And so I went downstairs, and there was this chair that he used to love to sit in. It was like a Queen Anne chair. And I got on my knees in front of him. I laid my hand on his knees, and I looked up at him, and I said, "Talk to me." I said, "Tell me what is wrong. What can I do? Where are we going? I need you to talk to me." And he never looked down. He never looked down at me. He continued to watch TV. He never acknowledged my presence. So I remember getting up off the floor, going upstairs, and crying myself to sleep. My self-esteem suffered. I definitely suffered from depression. When we would have family events, he stopped coming. So it always would be me and the girls. And I would always make excuses as to why he couldn't come. Well, he's tired. He couldn't work. Not really telling my family, or even letting my family know that he just didn't come because he just didn't want to, or he really didn't turn me an answer as to why he just would sit there. He just wouldn't come. When I saw the sheet that my sister-in-law gave me concerning the questions about, are you being abused? It was basically the fear that I lived in. Control. He did try to do a lot of controlling. However, the way that I grew up, I think we butt heads a little bit there, because it was only so much that I would allow. And just the feeling of fear, the feeling of feeling less than, the way that he would talk to me, the way that I would withdraw and kind of cower up. It was just a lot of things. It wasn't even really about money. It was just how I was feeling emotionally inside, even when we had a conversation, or how I was treated. That I knew it was red flags that started to come up, that I was like, wow, I'm being abused. I'm not being hit, but I'm being abused. I was not really allowed to have friends. If I did connect with someone from the church, he would really talk really bad about them, or say ugly things about them. I couldn't go out and have lunches, or go out to lunch with different people. He didn't like people coming over to the house. My family could come, because then he could kind of portray like, he was Mr. Father. However, he did not like people coming over to the house to visit. So basically, I did not have a whole lot of outside friends. When I started my new job, my hours were from 8 to 5. However, I was given a really heavy workload. And so I would call home and tell him that I could not get off work on time, and that would make him angry. And so the girls would call me, "Daddy's not feeding us. Daddy's not letting us eat." So basically, the punishment for me working late was him not feeding the children. Nobody got fed until I got home. So it was just those little things that happened that sent up red flags that I knew this is not right. I began to feel so beat down with such a low self-esteem that at that time I was probably a size 8 or 10, I was wearing clothes. People would give me clothes size 18 and 20, and I would just throw them on. I would pull my hair back in a ponytail, and I was just really in a bad state of depression. I went from someone who loved to laugh to someone who pretty much cowered in a corner. And I noticed that change within myself, and I realized that I just was not happy. I think I was always covering. I covered for a long time. I'm trying to remember when I finally started saying something. It might have been after the first separation. Yeah. I think it was after the first separation. There was an altercation at my home, and actually the police were called on me. He called the police on me. And at that time, I called my brothers, and my brothers came and got me, and me and my daughters, and we actually moved in with them for a while. So that's kind of when the cat started coming out of the bag, and so I started to open up a little bit more then. But one thing that I did do was I tried to cover it up, and I've heard that that's what happens with many people who are in abusive relationships. They try to make excuses, they try to cover it up, they try to explain things away, and I realized I was doing the exact same thing. Right. Just even struggling, like even now, telling part of my story. Even now, years later, after so much healing has taken place, and I'm in a better place, I'm happier, I'm loving Hope again, whereas I wasn't loving her before. Even now, I find it still hard to talk about, and I think there's still a little bit of covering that I'm doing, but I'm sitting here today because I'm ready to tell my story, and I'm ready to share with the world what has happened and what has been happening, because so many of us live in abusive relationships, but we don't talk about it. And I think it's time that we talk about it and get our identity back. For so many years, I did not have that. For so many years, I cowered in a corner, and the strong person that I used to be, I literally felt like she was dying, that she died. And even going to work and going to church and all of these other kind of things, they still could not fulfill something that I knew that it was just wrong, and I knew it was all wrong, but I didn't know how to get out. And I really started seeking God about that. And I remember one Sunday I went to church, and the pastor, the topic of the sermon, I can't even tell you what book of the Bible he came from, but the topic was, what are you willing to do to see change? And I sat there in that service, and I knew then that I was not going to be the same, and I wasn't. I started making plans then. About that time, like I said, he never put his hands on me, but there was always the spirit of the threat hovering. It was almost like I would feel a spirit of hate, till the point that I was kind of afraid to even walk past him. I just felt like it was, I could feel it. You could feel it in the room. You could cut it with a knife. And my daughters had started to feel this too. They started bickering and arguing back and forth with each other so bad. It was just the wrong spirit that was in my household that I just couldn't stand. My daughter started skipping school. She didn't sleep. She stayed up all night because she was afraid that Daddy was going to do something to me. He stayed downstairs. I stayed upstairs. And when he had early shifts, he would come up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, of course, to take his showers and get ready, and then go to work. But during that whole time, I was on alert. And about this time, I'm not even sure if anyone ever knows this or whether I'm getting ready to reveal it right now, but during that time, I had literally started sleeping with a pair of scissors or a box cutter up under my pillow. And again, my daughter, she was not sleeping at night because she thought she had to stay awake to watch over me. So it had gotten to that point where I had lost it. I had contemplated suicide, but I knew I couldn't leave because of my daughters. It was hard and it was long, and I honestly could not see my way out. I felt like I was trapped because I felt like the church or my parents or whoever thought that I had to stay. But in my heart, I wanted to go. And I was even called to the school for my younger daughter because she had started cutting herself. That was it. It was not going to happen. It was not going to happen to my daughters. That was it. I heard that sermon and something began to stir on the inside of me. And I knew that I was not going to stay in this turmoil of farce of a marriage any longer. And I was ready to go. It was amazing. God met me exactly where I was. We had separated one time, and during that period of separation, I found myself always in the closet praying. I would get up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, grab my pillow, grab my blanket, go lay down in the closet and cry. And I would just lay it all before the Lord. And I was honest with him. I told God, I said, I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. And I did that. I just poured out. I was real. I didn't try to block anything out. I was being very honest with the Father. And in turn, he had me pray for him, which we all know that's hard. That is hard. And I would say, Lord, I don't want to pray for him, but I will. And I began to pray for him. And one night, I was in the closet and, I had started feeling like something was going to happen. And I didn't know what it was, but I was led to pray for him. And I just really began to pray for him. And I was speaking in a heavenly language to my Father. And the only words that I could get out English was, please spare his life. Please spare his life. And not too long after that, I was on my way back to work from lunch, and I saw huge backups on the highway. And immediately I knew that something had happened, and immediately his name popped in my spirit. Come to find out that he was in a terrible accident on a major highway here in Raleigh, where it was him in a car and it was a man in a pickup truck. And they actually ran up on their 18-wheeler and it burst into flames. The man in the pickup truck, he burned to death. However, my husband survived at the time. He survived. He walked away. He kicked out the window and he survived. Not only that, and I knew that it was God, and I knew that he had used me to intercede for him. But it didn't end there, because as God was leading me to pray for him, one night he came over, he had finished work, and he actually came to the house to drop some coats off for the girls. And he put the coats on the front door, rang the doorbell. I came downstairs and got them. And not too long after that, he called my daughter, and he told her that the gas station that he went in had just got robbed. He had stopped to get gas, and on his way in the gas station, a man ran in with a ski mask and a sawed-off shotgun. And he ran, so he had just escaped. So I knew God was covering him, even in that state, and using me to pray for him. And I remember one time I got so angry that I was like, God, why did you even let him live? Why did you use me to pray for him? Why is he alive? And the Lord, to this day, and that's why I have to forgive, because to this day the Lord said, he is my child just as much as you are. He has a soul just like you are, just like you have. Who am I to judge? I had to forgive. I had no other choice. God opened up a door, and the last night living in my old home was one where we stayed awake all night, me and the girls. And the next morning we left, And the first night that we stayed in our new place, and God made a way for us to have a new place, and he gave us everything we wanted, even in that new place. The first night we stayed in that new place, we slept on the floor. I had some coats. I didn't even have my clothes. We slept on the floor, and it was the best night of sleep we had in years. The next morning, my oldest daughter told me that she said that she felt like an angel was literally rubbing her back as she went to sleep. And I remember that first morning we woke up, and it seemed like the sun shone in every window, and it was so bright, and it was so peaceful. And we turned on music, and we danced, and we had the most awesome time. And since then, God has just been continuing to heal. During that time, I think I knew more about religion than I knew more about Christ. But through this experience, yeah, we became just like that. Oh, I love to lay before him. And I would just imagine myself sitting in his lap, laying in his arms. And I remember one night I was just laying in there, and I was just crying. I was just unloading. I was releasing. I love to release in the Lord's presence. And it was almost like a hand came up, and I knew it was the hand of Jesus, and wiped my tears. And instead of the water coming down his hands, it was almost like the tears were being absorbed into his skin. So he was wiping my tears away, and they were just being absorbed. And it was almost like he was saying, I died for that. I died for that tear you're crying. Give it to me. I died for that. Give me that hurt. Give me that pain. I died for that. That was it. He was wiping them away. He was wiping away. I've never felt so loved in all my life. And the Lord told me when we moved there that this was definitely going to be a place of healing, and it has been. I am more happier now than I have been in years, and it is because I know who I am. I finally have my identity back, and no one else will ever take that away from me. And that is what I want to leave with you all today. Your identity is in Christ. Never let anyone take that away from you. No one. No man has that right. No woman has that right. And if you're dealing with that right now, you need to get out of it. You need to seek the Father. Get your identity back. He loves you. You have a purpose. It's time to rise up and be all that he has called you to be, because he loves you with an everlasting love. He came for me in that closet, and he still comes for me. He still comes to me. Whenever I need him, I go and I lay, and he's right there. He is right there, and he's right there with you all too. It doesn't matter everything that I've been through. He was walking with me all along, and he did it so I could sit right here and tell you that he is a healer. He is a healer, and he is a deliverer, and I just thank God for that. I've seen my daughters turn around. My youngest daughter her name is Charity. And when I was pregnant with her, every day, just about, I would read the scripture on love to my belly. And as she went through this same situation with being talked down to by her dad, she went through that situation, and her self-esteem was low, and she had such an anger within her. But praise be to God, now I'm seeing charity. I am seeing love. I am seeing what I spoke over my belly before she was even born. And I give God glory for that. My oldest daughter, she has such a spirit of joy about her. She used to come home and say, Mommy, they tell me that I laugh too much. Mommy, they say I giggle and I'm immature and I laugh at everything. I say, nope, stop. She paid for that laughter. She paid for that joy. Not only that, I told her, I said, look at all the Kevin Harts, look at all the Steve Harveys. I said, they were told that they were childish too. I said, laugh, laugh, be who you are, laugh, enjoy life, and watch God. Be who you are called to be. Just be. And I have learned through everything that I've gone through to just be. Just be in him, just be.
Hallelujah. 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 Thank you, God. Hallelujah, God. Hallelujah, Jesus. Thank you, God. Hallelujah.
pretty. Bless me.
I want you to talk about this. I want to see if we can't add this in somewhere, even as we talk about the girls and even that process and the deliverance. But do you remember that night that we was at Greg and Laniqua's? And we had the best time ever, right? We was having a good old time laughing and doing what we do. And y'all was on the way home. And in the car, all of a sudden, it was like this somber, because y'all was like, we gotta go back home. One of the girls was like, we going back home. Then all of a sudden, they remembered, we don't live there anymore.
Yes.
And that is powerful. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When Dexter talk a lot about the reticular activating system, we talk about that in the subliminal, and what you live for so long, it's just in the subconscious mind. So in that subconscious mind, they thought they were going back over there and staying, forgetting that they now live. That was powerful.
Yeah.
So just sharing that, because it just kind of showed what they came out of, and it was like, that,
Yeah.
you know? All right, so let me get out the way.
Oh, God. Mess.
How it felt to just, just thinking about everything that you all had gone through, but then to see it was like, wow, that epiphany, and just begin, even to talk about it was beginning that process of, oh my God, I'm not there anymore. You know what I mean?
One night, it was not too long after we moved into our new place of peace. Our family had gotten together. Our family gets together a lot, and we just love each other, and we talk and we laugh and we have the best time. That night when we left and we were on our way home, it got quiet in the car, and I think it was Charity. She said, oh my gosh, she said, we got to go back home. And that was her thinking we were still in our old place. But then Unique was like, wait a minute. We don't live there anymore. We live in our new place. And then we all just thought, yay! We just start celebrating it. So just realizing, just in their minds, kind of at first thinking that they had to go back to the old place, and they didn't have to go back there anymore, that we were literally going to our new place. It just changed the whole atmosphere of the car, and we all just started dancing and laughing and just having a ball. I remember it. It was. We was like, we don't have to go anymore. I realized that when I started realizing that I was in an abusive type of, an emotional type of relationship, not realizing that even though I wasn't being hit, I was still being abused. And I started to rise up a little bit. And of course, when you start to rise up a little bit, things do begin to get a little worse, because now your abuser is like, oh, you trying to talk back. So things did get worse. My suggestion to anyone that is going through this is find someone to talk to. I don't know what kind of situation that you're in. I don't know what's happening or what your finances look like or what what kind of sources you have, but you definitely need to find a confidant, somebody to talk to, somebody to share with. I'm a Christian. I drew closer to the Lord. I prayed. He opened up doors for me that I never thought would be open. But if you are not there yet, if you have not accepted Jesus Christ yet, then find someone that you can confide in. Find someone that you can talk to. You need a place of release. You need to get out before you lose yourself. I was in a position where I was ready to put my car in a tree, but again, it was my daughters. I could not allow that to go on. If you have children, know that your children are watching. I think out of all of everything that happened to me, that hurt the worst. And when I saw that behavior being projected on my children, that's when Mother Hen really stood up, and I knew I had to fight back. So for the sake of yourself, for the sake of your children, don't stay there. There are many resources you can find online. Talk to someone, go to someone, and find a way out. I am Hope Scott. I am a mother. I am a child of God. I am a sister. I am a daughter. I've been hurt. I've gone through challenges. I've survived abuse. I've been singled out. I've been silent, but I've also been strong. I've also learned. I've also been loved. And because I am a child of God, I am an overcomer. This is Hope Scott, and I approve this message.
This story was one that is really impactful for me. It's so close and so personal. You see, I was that sister that asked the question, are you being abused? Things I saw, things that showed me that something wasn't quite right in the home. And to actually see her now, to hear from her, it blesses my soul. And I pray that it also bless you. I don't know what you're going through, and I know that there's someone out there watching and you can so relate. But every testimony that you've heard is a testimony to help us to do one thing, and that is overcome. Hope Scott, on this day, she helped every single last one of us know that who we are, no one can ever take. Who we are, no one will ever be able to steal it away. All we have to do is believe and fight for who we are, because we are all overcome.